The story we are going to reflect on is about Cain and Abel from the Old Testament, a story with a tragic ending, culminating in murder. Well, after Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden, they had many children. Their first son, Cain, became a farmer, and their second son, Abel, became a shepherd. One day, Cain and Abel made offerings to God. Do you know what an offering is? It's a special kind of gift. God was pleased with Abel's offering, but not with Cain's. This made Cain very angry. God warned Cain that his anger could lead him to do something bad. But Cain didn't listen. Instead, Cain said to Abel, "Come to the field with me." While they were alone in the field, Cain attacked his brother and killed him. What would God do about it? Well, God punished Cain by sending him away from his family. Cain would never be allowed to return. Now, what lessons can we take from this sad story for our lives? First lesson: what we give makes a difference. Cain and Abel gave a gift to the Lord. The Lord accepted Abel's gift, but did not accept Cain's. If we look closely at how the Bible describes each of their gifts, we can see the possible reason why God accepted one and rejected the other. This reason leads us to the first lesson that the story of Cain and Abel teaches us. This lesson is, what we give makes a difference. In Genesis chapter 4, verse 3, it says, "When it was time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord." At first, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with what Cain presented, but after reading the description of Abel's gift, we see a difference. In verse 4, it says, "Abel also brought a gift, the best portions of the firstborn lambs from his flock." Let's observe the difference in how Abel's gift was described. Abel's gift was the best portions of the firstborn lambs. On the other hand, Cain presented some of his crops, but not the best. Therefore, what we give makes a difference. Second lesson: learn to give like Abel, not like Cain. Following Abel's example, we should strive to give our best in all areas of life. This applies to giving to God and, most importantly, to people. When it comes to God, He doesn't need anything from us. So when we give anything to the Lord, it's more about our hearts in relation to the Lord than the thing itself. What Cain gave reflected a heart that doesn't honor God much. He didn't give his best. When we take what we offer to God lightly, we have a heart similar to Cain's. It is said in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 12, verse 30, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength." As for giving to people, the Bible says that the second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. Mark, chapter 12, verse 31. Now, we should do to others what we would like them to do to us. Third lesson: do not envy others. This lesson that Cain and Abel teach us is not to envy others. Even though Abel had nothing to do with Cain's present and God's rejection of him, Cain became angry and killed him. Cain mistakenly saw Abel as the problem. In Genesis, chapter 4, verse 7, God told him that if he did what was right, he would be accepted. Not just his or Abel's offering could be accepted. Both gifts could have been accepted. Despite hearing that he did not do the right thing, Cain still envied Abel. But it's not that God thought Abel was better than Cain. Given the reason why God rejected Cain, it tells us that Abel simply did the right thing. Cain's envious reaction towards Abel seems to be of human nature. We tend to envy people instead of considering what they had to do to achieve the results they obtained. We see a person with a beautiful house, but we don't see their years of sacrifice to save for it. Similarly, we see someone getting promoted at work, but instead of reasoning that it's because of their hard work, we think they're lucky or receive special treatment. Therefore, we must be careful when we start feeling envious of others. It can lead us to do wrong things. Remember that just because someone has what they have doesn't necessarily mean we can't achieve what they have achieved as well. Being informed about what they had to do to achieve what they got can prevent us from envying them. Fourth lesson, there is a right way to do things. When God told Cain that he would be accepted if he did what is right, read in Genesis, chapter 4, verse 7, it teaches us that there is a right way to do things. This may seem obvious, but in life, we can feel angry, like Cain, because of the problems that occur, thinking that there is a mysterious reason why we are not getting the results that others seem to be getting. Fifth lesson, there are consequences for our actions. After Cain killed Abel, God punished him. In Genesis, chapter 4, verses 11 to 12, God said to him, "Now you are cursed and banished from the ground, which has swallowed your brother's blood. No matter how much you work the soil, it will never yield enough crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." God's response to Cain killing Abel reminds us of a lesson we all know but often need to be reminded of. The lesson is that there are consequences for our actions. In the case of Cain and Abel, we see the immediate consequence. But in life, since the consequences of our actions are not always immediate, it may seem like there are no consequences. The law of cause and effect ensures that there will always be consequences for our actions. Sometimes, even seemingly insignificant habits add up over the years and then shock us. For example, eating unhealthy food doesn't harm us immediately after a meal, but over time, we find ourselves sick and or overweight. Just because we don't see the consequences immediately doesn't mean we won't see them. Sixth lesson, we have the power to do the right thing. The final lesson we will learn from Cain and Abel comes from God's response to Cain's anger. In addition to telling him that he would be accepted if he did what is right, God said, "But if you refuse to do what is right, watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you. But you must subdue it and be its master." Genesis, chapter 4, verse 7. God told Cain that he had the power to overcome sin. In other words, he didn't have to do the wrong thing. This teaches us that we have the power to do the right thing because we can overcome sin. In life, we may find ourselves reasoning that eventually we will fail and, therefore, it doesn't make sense to resist the temptation. As a result, we give in without any real struggle when we are tempted. God telling Cain that he could subdue and master sin is not the only place in the Bible that suggests our power to do the right thing. 1 John, chapter 2, verse 1 says, "My dear children, I write this to you so that you will not sin. But if anybody does sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous one." Notice this, here in John, there is a similar lesson to the one in the Old Testament. Although Cain was angry, it didn't mean that he couldn't resist the temptation to kill Abel. Similarly, when we find ourselves in tempting situations, let us remember that we have the power to do the right thing. We can overcome sin. In conclusion, let us remember the story of Cain and Abel and learn these lessons to walk in God's will in our lives. May we remain in the peace of God.